following podcast is part of the Underdog Sports Podcasting Network. For a full list of our shows, as well as breaking sports news and engaging feature stories, visit us at www.theunderdogsports.com.
Welcome to a new episode of Tales from the Association. I'm Chris Horwedel, and my guest today is longtime NBA center Scot Pollard. I will tell you that this was still very early on in the recording process, but this episode was kind of where I realized that I was onto something. This was an interesting one because I did go into it with some preconceived notions about Scott, due largely to how he's been portrayed in the media, and I'm thrilled to say that they were way off base. I could not have enjoyed talking to Scott more than I did. You'll see he's a very open man who tells some fascinating stories about what life in the NBA is really like, and gives a unique insight into some of the NBA's biggest stars like Joe Dumars, Reggie Miller, Kevin Garnett, and LeBron James. This show is a must-listen for any real basketball fan, and that's it for the introduction. Here is this week's Tales from the Association with Scot Pollard. Enjoy.
Tales from the Association, yeah, it's going down. This the podcast, yeah, you heard it all around. Players hit us with that career, cause you know that basketball, man, is not always there. Sometimes it come and go from the recruitment to the college phase, back to the NBA draft, yeah, that's nowadays. Playing internationally, and at the life at a basketball, man, they gonna tell us all how it go. See, story is how now you know. Tales from the Association. Yeah.
Welcome to a special edition of the Underdog Podcast. I'm Chris Horwedel, and my guest today is a longtime NBA big man, movie star, broadcaster, and recently Survivor contestant, Scot Pollard. Scott, thank you so much for coming on the show.
It is an honor to be on the show. Thanks, Chris.
I appreciate that. So you were recruited heavily out of high school, and you went to a couple of different high schools. What's that experience like, having these big-time college programs and these big-time college coaches pitching you to come to their school?
Well, my father is in the State of Utah Hall of Fame, and so he went through the recruiting process. All four of my brothers and my sister, I'm the youngest of six, they all went through the recruiting process. So I was very fortunate in my position that as I got to be more nationally recognized and highly recruited, and I don't want to sound egotistical, but I was the most highly recruited of my siblings. But having had them go through it before me, helped me learn a lot about the process and what to listen for and what to look for. For example, all four of my brothers, they ended up going to college on scholarships. They are Mormon. My whole family is Mormon. I went away from the religion at a young age, but they all got recruited. They all signed with colleges, and then they went on their missions for the church. And when they came back, every single one of them had a different head coach. Yeah. So they immediately transferred or quit or stopped playing because the new coach was like, "I didn't recruit you. I don't want you." And hopefully those rules get settled. It's starting to relax nowadays for players that transfer and not be penalized because they want to transfer or their coach gets fired and they want to go with their coach. And so hopefully those rules continue. But at the time that my brothers went through that, it was a very heartfelt experience for me. So it's hard for me to decide on a school that there wasn't a coach. If the coach wasn't 100%, that's his program. Yeah. I was not even considering them. And that's one of the many things that helped me decide on which college I wanted to go to, and seeing through the college coaches that they might be there, but they're not like rock solid. They're going to be there forever. And a great example is, as you mentioned, I went to two different high schools. One of them I went to Kamiakin High School in the southeast corner, of the state of Washington, just for my senior year. My father had passed away, and I needed to go live with my oldest brother for a while to get on my feet. And Coach Kelvin Sampson was at Washington State at that time. And, of course, right down the road, I'm in the Tri-Cities, which is just south of Spokane and Pullman, where the Washington State campus is. And he recruited the heck out of me, and he wanted me to go there. And I told him to his face, I said, "Kelvin, I love you. You're a great coach and a great man. I would love to play for you, but you're not going to be here long." And he was like, "Oh, no. Well, 2 years later, I'm playing at Kansas, and he's a head coach at Oklahoma. And I went up to him and I said, Kelvin, told you. He goes, you're right, big fella.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting thing that's going on right now, because there are some movements to push change through in the transfer rules. You know, typically players are going to have to sit out a season if they transfer from one D1 to another. But we're seeing a movement to sort of abolish that and let players play right away. Do you think that's the right move, or does that open sort of a Pandora's box with college basketball free agency?
I think both, but I don't see a downside, because when players commit, why do they get punished if they change their mind?
Right.
The coaches can change their mind and leave, and they can go coach the next year. So, and they're getting paid. But the players aren't getting paid. They're getting a free scholarship, yes, and I appreciated mine, and I got it, and I earned it in 4 years, and I'm very proud to have done that. But that's not payment. That is a benefit. That's a perk. So why would you – I don't even understand why anybody could even justify penalizing a player that commits to a college, and all of a sudden they get there and they realize, I don't like this city,
right.
I don't like this school, I don't like the coach, I don't like the situation, they recruited over me. Whatever the reason is, why can't a college athlete change their mind and say, hey, I made a mistake. I picked a college, I was wrong, and now I got to sit out a year and waste a year of my youth, my prime, because college rules are I can't change and go to a different school. So I think it's absolutely ridiculous that players get penalized to change their mind and go to a different school. And I think that those rules should be changed and abolished completely, and let players have the freedom of going wherever. And for purists that argue against that, well, do you cheer for the NBA or NFL at all? Because there's no loyalty in corporations that are hiring or paying players millions of dollars at the next level. There's no loyalty. There's no player going, oh man, I really want to go get more money somewhere else, and the corporation's scrambling over themselves. This billionaire owner going, no, please don't leave. We'll pay you whatever we can afford you. There's no loyalty there. I got traded twice in my career, and neither time was I made aware of it before.
Wow.
I was like a stock. It was like a stock. I woke up in the morning and all of a sudden now it's traded. So I'm absolutely all for college players being allowed to change their mind and go without penalty to another organization, because the head coaches can, the athletic directors can, anyone else involved in that sport, whether it's basketball or football or volleyball or whatever sport it is, everybody else that's involved can go to a different college and start working immediately. Why are you punishing the players? It doesn't make any sense at all to me.
That's completely fair. And you touched on another subject that I think is interesting. Clearly, you think there should be some sort of financial compensation for the players in college. How do you make that work, though? Does that have to be sort of level across the board? Is that broken down by what the revenue brought in by the sport? Because that's a tough thing.
That is a tough thing to make it fair, but there's always going to be the haves and the have-nots, right?
Yeah.
This is a business now. I'm looking at the next 20 years, and I'm looking at super conferences, and I'm looking at maybe the NCAA being abolished at some point. Not abolished, but just passed off, because I really do still believe in that concept that there might become and will become 4 conferences that get to 16 teams and just go, well, we don't need the NCAA anymore. And they create their own 64-team March Madness. They create their own football tournament schedule. They get their own TV deals, and they become semi or professional sports in a sense, because
interesting.
There's too much money involved now, and too much of that money, which is 100% of it, is going to the corporations, which are these colleges. So there are always going to be the haves and the have-nots. So it's going to be hard to swallow for the have-nots, but for the haves, maybe there is some kind of profit sharing for the haves that go, okay, we'll kick 10% to the have-nots. I'm not even talking about within the conference. Are going to be fine. The big conferences, the football conferences. I mean, the SEC, which is overrated in my opinion in football right now, is making a ridiculous amount of money because of football. That's where the money is, of course.
Yeah.
So let's say it's the four super conferences. They have a clause in their contract, like, all right, we're all the haves. Okay, the 64 of us, 4 16-team leagues. We are going to kick 10% to the have-nots and fund their postseason tournaments or whatever, fund a stipend for their players as well, just because of that. But the reality of it is, with few exceptions, the best players are now increasingly going to the same schools.
Yeah.
Very, very few players are breaking through because they went to Chappaqua State A&M. You know, like very few of them are breaking through. And now there are. Obviously, one of the best players in the world right now went to Davidson, Steph Curry. Or, I'm sorry, Steph Curry, not his brother. But, you know, there's going to be people left out in the cold no matter how you slice it. So why bother with that? Why not just let the haves do it, let them pay the players, let it become semi-professional sports? They're still going to school. They're still adhering to some rules. But it's let's be realistic. It's already happening.
Right.
Players are getting paid at the top programs anyway. Players are getting benefits beyond their scholarship at the top programs anyway. It's always going to happen. And it's a little bit like Colorado admitted a long time ago, and California and Nevada just followed suit. People are going to be doing some things that maybe we all don't agree with and we all don't do, but we might as well cash in on it. And
Sure.
That's how I feel about paying players in college. It's the same way. I'm not a fan of it. It's not my favorite thing to think about is paying players and the absolution of the dissolution of amateur sports. It's not what I would love to see because I am a basketball purist. I'm an athlete purist. But at the same time, I do think that players should get paid. I think that players are deserving of it. When I was in school, they told us that every time we were on national TV, when I suited up for the Jayhawks, our school got $9 million.
Oh, boy.
I'm sure that's a much bigger number now.
Yeah.
and you can't figure out a way to get the players and that are generating that money, because they're the ones that are generating that money. They're the talent. They're the show. It's like saying, oh, Tom Cruise is in the Mission Impossible 48, and he gets $5 and the recognition in that movie, but the studio makes the rest of that $1 billion franchise. No, sorry, the talent is the talent, and the talent needs to be funded somehow, some way.
Right, and you misspoke a little bit with the Seth thing. You obviously corrected yourself right away, but Seth is another example of that. He started off at Liberty.
Yeah,
those guys, the NBA does find talent, but you're right. Now everybody goes to Duke, everybody goes to Kentucky, everybody goes to Kansas. There's 4 or 5 schools that dominate the recruiting landscape every single year, and I wonder how good that is for the players. If you were in a situation like with this Kentucky team right now, like, how would you feel having 5 other 5-star recruits brought in at your position? Is it just the best guy plays and it's competition and everybody gets better, or should there be some loyalty there?
You can never count on loyalty
Well,
when it comes to you signing with a corporation, and that's what these colleges are, as I said.
Yeah.
So you're choosing that competition. You're choosing that challenge just to say, hey, I'm going to this program because I think that I have a chance to make it to the next level, and this is the best chance I have of making it to the next level. I went to Kansas because of the tradition. I wasn't thinking next level. I was thinking, hey, this is a great opportunity for me if I have a chance to make it to the next level. But I went there because I knew that no matter what happened in those 4 years I was in school, I was going to respect Roy Williams and love every decision that he made of the future, because that's basically what you're doing is you're putting your life in the hands of the coach.
Absolutely.
So the players that have that opportunity and the desire to go have that competitive situation that arises in these top programs that have 4 or 5 players in their position, that's the nature of the beast now. If you choose to go that route, you're good enough, most likely, to get there, and you're a McDonald's All-American and whatever it is that gets you to the recognition of being by one of those top elite schools. But you also, the downside of it is there's a lot of players that get shuffled to the side there, and they end up transferring. They end up transferring to a smaller school because they go, I wanted to play more. I thought I was going to start. I thought I was better than I am. whatever it is, and they still end up fulfilling their college dreams. And the guys that are good enough, as I tell my kids and kids I coach and people I speak to, other parents that think that they put their kids in travel basketball that's going to make them get to the NBA, that's not true. What's true is the player will get found. If they're good enough, if you are good enough, you will get discovered. I don't care if you're at Poughkeepsie State A&M. I don't care if you're at Duke. I don't care where you are. If you're good enough, you're going to make the next level or whatever sport you are. And if you're not, you just work. Or maybe you had a bad body and you got bad injuries, or you had bad luck. But the bad luck cases, the guys that and guys and girls, everybody that don't make it to that pro level, very few of them can say, "Yeah, I should have been," except for And then the excuse is always the real reason. The excuse is either they didn't work hard enough. It's not where you went to school. It's never that. It's never. I played with too many superstars that went to small schools. Rick Mahorn, Joe Dumars. I mean, you're talking about McNeese State here. Come on.
Yeah.
Like, if you're good enough, you're going to get there, and you're going to get found. And it's not about getting a trainer when you're 9 years old because your parents are going to try to buy your way into the NBA. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I think your Mission Impossible Tom Cruise analogy is an interesting one, and you sort of lived through an extreme example of that, where you played for one of the greatest, most legendary college coaches of all time in Roy Williams. But people aren't tuning in to watch Roy Williams on the sidelines. They're tuning in to watch, yourself and Rafe and Paul and Jock and Greg.
Absolutely. And he is the architect. He's the director. Are you watching a movie because Wu directed it? Mm-hmm. Because Scorsese directed it? Yes. Because you're going to get a certain amount of product. But that's not the only reason you're going. You're going because Samuel L. Jackson's in the movie. Right. You're going because Tom Cruise is in the movie. Your stars are the ones now. It's Rock. Like The Rock. And The Rock's in the movie, so I'm going to go watch it. Not me personally. I respect the hell out of that guy, but not my favorite actor.
Okay.
But there's a lot of talk about what you just said, Chris. That are the coaches the ones putting people in seats, or are the talent putting people in seats? And in my opinion, and I will say this until I'm in the grave, it's always the talent. Mm-hmm. As much as I love Greg Popovich and I love his coaching style, and I would love to have played for him in the NBA as a Spur, and I respect him more than any other coach that I haven't played for, but people still aren't going to use Greg Popovich.
Right.
They're going and they're tuning in because of Tim Duncan and because of Ginobili and the whole gang. Now Kawhi Leonard is a phenomenal player. So it's always the talent, and it's always going to be the talent.
So let's talk about Paul Pierce for a second, because this is one of my all-time favorite basketball players. What was your thinking of Paul when he showed up? I guess you were a junior that year. Was it obvious how good this guy was, or was there a long journey ahead of him?
Well, first of all, when he came to visit campus on his visit, he was like 15 years old, I think. He got to school and he was just 16.
Oh, wow.
So he was really young. He kept his headphones on the whole time and hardly spoke on his recruiting trip. And then when he got there, it was kind of the same thing. He was really shy, and we called him Bambi for a while because he was all elbows and knees. And you could tell there was greatness. To answer your question in a short answer, yes, we knew there was greatness in him. We didn't know how great, but we knew there was greatness in him. We knew he was going to the next level. Because the thing about Paul is his freakish strength with the basketball. I don't recall him ever getting the ball knocked out of his hands as a teammate at Kansas or as a pro in Boston. The guy was just a guy that got the ball to the basket. If he got blocked after he let it go, that's one thing, and that happened rarely. Mm-hmm. But Paul was so strong with the basketball. There weren't a lot of people that I played against or played with, and I can't think of anybody that got stripped as little as Paul Pierce did. He was a basketball genius in the sense of finding the basket with the strength that was totally underrated, obviously, and it's just because of the way he looked. He didn't look like he was a gym rat, and he is absolutely a gym rat. He was, but he's a phenomenal talent. We loved watching him get better. It's a unique experience as an older player when you got younger players coming in, both on the college level for me and as a pro, when you get to see young talent come in and you just go, man, I hope I get to stick around and watch them become as great as you see that they're going to be. And I guess that's what coaches love being coaches, because they get to see those light bulbs turn on. I mean, as a parent of 4 kids, I've gone through that phase with each one of my kids in a way. And you love seeing the light bulb turn on. You love seeing the talent realized that you see. You go, man, this kid's got a lot of talent. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. And then all of a sudden they do something and they get so much better and they're happy and they're proud of themselves. And then you go, well, there's another ladder, climb that one. And then the great ones do. The great ones always find a new ladder to climb to a new level of greatness. And Paul Pierce definitely falls in that category of somebody that kept on climbing ladders and using the natural talent that we all knew he had to become one of the greatest. Yeah,
so I grew up, born in California, moved to Pennsylvania for the large majority of my life, and now we're back in California. But so I was a 76ers fan and remain a Philadelphia 76ers fan. And that 1998 NBA draft is the moment I look at is just changing the direction of that franchise, because you have Larry Brown as the head coach and you have the incredible Allen Iverson as a young player on that team. And Larry Brown makes a promise to a little guard from St. Louis named Larry Hughes that if he's available, he's going to draft him because he doesn't think Paul Pierce is going to be there when the Sixers pick at 8. We all know that the next 2 picks after Larry Hughes was taken 8 by the 76ers are Dirk Nowitzki and Paul Pierce. It's just what could have been drives me crazy, Scott.
Well, there's always that. Every single draft has that, especially as the years go by and the light bulbs turn on for some players as they're drafted and they become greater than they were expected to be, and they're based on draft position. And then the undrafted work their way in and become superstars. And you just go, man, we drafted this guy first, and this guy undrafted becomes an all-star in his first year. Like, And that's what's both the wonderful thing about the draft and the most painful thing about the draft, and it gets general managers fired.
Absolutely. So the number 1 pick in that draft is Michael Olowokandi from Pacific University. With how far scouting has come in the last 20 years, do we ever see a Michael Olowokandi-like mistake that high again?
Absolutely.
Really? You think so?
Yeah, there will always be that, because you can scout a player from birth and you can overlook injuries. And I knew somebody. I know somebody that drafted a guy that he was the first overall pick, and he still stands by that pick, and the guy never amounted to anything, and it was because he had a bad body. But there's overlooking their injury pattern or their history of that, lack of work ethic or off the court problems, whatever other detractor that you would want to say that doesn't have much to do with their particular sport, but you overlook those things because their talent is there, and you're thinking, you know what, I'm going to hone that talent. They're going to be around positives, and they're going to be around professionals, and they're going to get the highest level of training, and all that stuff's going to fade away, and they're going to be the greatest ever. So there's always going to be that. There's always going to be people that make mistakes. There are always going to be draft busts, as the phrase goes, because you can't test a person's will. You can't for sure know if somebody is going to take all those gifts that have been given to them, and then all of the opportunity that surrounds them, whether it's the trainers and the professional coaches, everybody that's around them to help make them better. There are always going to be those busts that no matter how good they look on paper, how good they look on a computer screen, you get them, you draft them, you pay them millions of dollars, and all of a sudden they just go, done. There's always going to be those. There's no amount of scouting that's going to overcome the draft bust.
Yeah. Well, before we get back to your career, I want to get your take on one other thing, and that is how much stock should we put on a player being able to lead his team to actually winning games at the college level? Because, the last 2 number 1 picks, both to my franchise, the 76ers, are Ben Simmons and Markelle Fultz, and neither of those players, as talented as they are, were able to take their teams into the NCAA tournament. Is that a red flag in your mind?
No, I don't see college team success as a red flag for drafting a player high. I think it can be a positive. Okay. It's an attribute like, when you think about the guys that made everybody on their team better, you think about Michael Jordan, you think about Magic Johnson, you think about Larry Bird. You think about guys that their mission in life is to make everyone better because they're that selfish that they want to win.
Mm-hmm.
That again goes back to what I was just speaking about before, is the character of a person.
Right.
That you can't quantify that based on how their team was in college, because you can have all the will you want in college, but you might just have some teammates that are bums.
Sure.
You might have some kids in school, at college, that they know they're not going to the next level, and they don't care if they win a game in the NCAA tournament. I'm not saying I played with guys like that, but I know it does. It happens. There's guys that just they get to the end of the season, they're like, we're in the tournament. I don't care if we win. I'm not going to play. I'm not going anymore after this. I'm done. I'm a senior, or I'm a sophomore, or whatever. I'm quitting. I'm not going to play basketball anymore ever. So they don't care. So that goes on to the character of the players they were with in college, I think, and to much less degree the NBA, because in the NBA, you're getting down to 450 men in the world that have that job. So those type of attitudes tend to get weeded out really fast, and they become the draft busts and they get out of there. So then you're working with players that do want to win, that do want to be a good teammate, do want to listen to the teammates and get better. If you're teamed up with a Magic Johnson type character in the NBA, you're absolutely going to listen to him. If you get teamed up with Michael Jordan, you're absolutely going to listen to him. Because they're the guys that are going to make you better if you do listen to them. If you don't, well, you're an idiot.
Right. And, well, I mean, you look at a guy like Kobe Bryant, and he had, and I guess Kevin Garnett to an extent, too. They just have problem after problem after problem with teammates who aren't willing to work to their level. Well,
and I never played with Kobe. I didn't like Kobe, but that's outside looking in. I don't know Kobe personally. Mm-hmm. I just know that he did have issues with teammates along the way. And it could have been just because he held himself to such a high level of excellence and his teammates weren't willing to give it to him, that maybe they didn't like him. But I think that Shaq is an amazing player, and if you can't get along with Shaq, I'm wondering how you are as a person.
Right.
But anyway, I did play with Kevin, and Kevin is a guy that was in there early, stayed late, gym rat, and wanted to get better, wanted everybody on the team to get better and work as hard as he did. And he was also an outspoken bully about it. And again, we're talking big boy basketball here.
Yeah.
If you can't handle being around a bully and you got to go get counseling because your teammate called you a name or a slur or whatever because they want you to be better than you're being, then you don't belong in the big boy league. So that was something I really respect about Kevin, and we hated each other, playing against each other for our whole career until we were teammates in Boston. And then we became fast friends. And he's not my favorite person in the whole world, but I do like Kevin, and I respect the hell out of Kevin Garnett because he's part of the reason I got a championship ring right now.
No, that's true. And that was an incredible finals, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. So NBA draft 1997, you end up going 19 overall. What were your expectations heading into the night?
Well, back then it wasn't national televised. It wasn't nearly as big of a deal as it is now. Mm-hmm. I was in Las Vegas with my brand new wife, who I'm not with anymore. But we got away. There was no reason to go to the draft.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't going to be a lottery pick. I was projected mid to late first round and probably second round by everybody I worked out with. Detroit, for example, the team that picked me 19th. They had the first pick of the second round, and that's what they told me flat out. That's why they worked me out. So I wasn't having any illusions I was getting picked by Detroit. And then as it got closer to the draft, then all the teams I worked out for that had the last picks of the first round, Atlanta, New York, Milwaukee, Chicago, Utah. I didn't work out for Utah because I told them I wouldn't go there. But all those teams, I might be missing one or two, they all said, based on my workout, that if I was available, they were going to take me. Mm-hmm. And basically that's what got me drafted 19 as opposed to the first pick of the second round by Detroit, because they weren't planning on picking me in the first round. They wanted me for that first pick of the second round, but then I went and worked out for everybody else who was after them in the late part of the first round. And they all said, if I'm available, they're taking me. So Detroit got scared and they picked me, even though they didn't think I was worth that first round pick. And so, I give that speech to kids all the time, talking about work ethic and never quit, never think that, just because people are saying that you're this, don't accept that.
right.
and go above and beyond. And that's what I did, and I ended up being the 19th pick of the first round in a pretty good draft, not an excellent draft, not the 96 draft, but, you know, it was a really good draft. And so that's a good story to tell my kids, and that hard work does pay off, and it got me places.
So you walk into a Detroit Pistons team as a rookie, and there are guys like Joe Dumars, Grant Hill, Lindsey Hunter, Rick Mahorn, Aaron McKee, and just player after player, superstar after superstar, Ratliff, Stackhouse. What's that like for a young guy?
Well, Jerry and I were the same age, so it was cool to see him again because we had played in a few All-Star games together. But, you know, I was the only white guy on the team in Detroit. Mm. And the best piece of advice I got was from Rick Mahorn and Joe Dumars. They both said, you know, bad boys. They were like, don't go south of this street.
Okay.
Like, wherever you live, don't live down there, and also don't drive down there unless you rent a car because it's probably get stolen. And
Jesus.
These are harder times. Detroit's back on the upswing, and I love the city. Don't get me wrong, ladies and gentlemen. I love Detroit. It's a great city, and I've been there many times, and I loved living there. But, you know, I ended up settling in a, you know, pocket of upper class in Birmingham, which is a beautiful little place to live. It was a great place to live. But, you know, walking in that locker room, it was intimidating. You know, I'm going from San Diego, where there's nobody watching basketball because it's an outdoor city. That's where I grew up. And then I go to Kansas, where the only thing that anybody cares about is basketball all the time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 a year. And then I get to Detroit, and the temperature is just kind of like, who's this guy? We wasted our first-round pick on him.
Right.
And, you know, you get called this and you get called that. And, you know, I just went to work. And I didn't get along with Doug Collins. He and I had different mindsets. He was the kind of coach that I think he wanted to ride the rookies and kind of think that, you know, if I belittle him, I'll get more out of him. And he didn't realize that doesn't work for me.
Sure.
But he got fired halfway through the year, and Alvin Gentry, who had coached at Kansas and knew where I was coming from, he took over. And I think that I finished my rookie year in a much better frame of mind than I started it, because I will admit I called Roy Williams a couple times during my rookie year, and I just said, Coach, I don't know if the NBA is for me. I don't know if I can do this. I'm working hard, but this isn't what I thought it was going to be. Maybe I don't belong here. And he told me, first of all, Scotty, and he's one of two men I don't mind that called me Scotty. My father is the first one, and then Roy was the second one. I don't like being called Scotty. I'm a man. But he said, Scotty, let me tell you, first of all, you belong. You wouldn't have got drafted if you didn't belong. And second of all, let me tell you, how long is that contract that you signed? I said, 3 years, sir. And he goes, well, let me tell you, son, 3 years in the NBA is a long time. You don't know what's going to happen. So you just keep your head to the grindstone, and you just keep on working your daggone tail off like you always did for me. And he would say that to me pretty much every time that I would call him. He'd give me the same speech. I just needed to hear it again because I was just miserable. It was cold and dark, and, you know, Detroit.
Yes.
The weather up there, it's not California.
No.
So, especially during basketball season. So, you know, it was a tough rookie year and a tough growth process for me, but I learned so much. And I'm friendly with Rick Mahorn to this day. And I wasn't ever really close with Joe. He was nearing more of the end of his career than Rick was, but also Joe is just Joe, and Joe played tennis before games and basketball, or before practice he would go play tennis. So
right.
Basketball at the time I was teammates with Joe Dumars seemed to be, to me, like a little bit of an afterthought, but, you know, hey, he won rings with the bad boys and finished his career in the same city he started in, and that's commendable. But, you know, it was a rookie year that set up the rest of my NBA career. It was the only year of my entire basketball career from my junior year of high school that I didn't play in the postseason.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot that year in my rookie year in Detroit, and I think it made me a better pro, having had some actual hard times in a team that wasn't that good, despite all the talent on it, because every NBA team has talent, as we all know. but we didn't make it to the playoffs, and that's the only time in my whole career. And so I learned a lot from having those hard times and those questionable moments of things that I was like, oh, man, I don't know if I can handle this. And it tested my manhood. It made me grow up more and taught me about the NBA. And Rick Mahorn, more than anybody that I ever played with, taught me about the NBA and put me through some hard times and embarrassed the hell out of me at times. And I appreciate it to this day. I love Rick Mahorn so much because of all the crap he put me through my rookie year.
So then, earlier you alluded to players being commodities, and I think we're going to see that in your career for a little bit coming up. You get traded to Atlanta for former Dream Teamer Christian Laettner, and never actually play a game there. What the hell happened in Atlanta?
Well, as I found out after the fact, they just wanted out of Christian's contract. His was longer than mine, and they were really just looking to unload Christian. If I happened to work out, great, but they weren't about to keep the at the time. Now they didn't have the reserve list like they do now. At the time, they had the injured reserve. So if you were one of the 13th, 14th, or 15th player on the roster, you had to have an injury to stay on the roster, or you had to be cut. Well, they decided, right, and that was the shortened season. It was a lockout year, 99. So the training camp ended February, I think it was, or I'm sorry, the lockout ended, and training camp started in February or whatever, and I go in, and I'll never forget this. I walk in, and Lindsey Hunter in Detroit goes, "What are you doing here?" I came in to work out. "What are you doing here?" And he goes, "Well, it was in the paper this morning. You got traded." So that's how I ended up in Atlanta. Without even knowing I was getting traded to Atlanta. It was in the Detroit Free Press that morning. So
Scott, so let me stop you real quick. How much was? Okay. Is there any animosity towards that front office for not calling you and being men and telling you that they've traded you?
Well, at the time, yeah. I mean, I had to wait for an hour to speak to Rick Sund at the time because he was still finalizing the deal, supposedly, or that's what they told me anyway. So I waited outside, and then I finally got in and talked to him, and I threw some words at him at a high volume. I wasn't real happy about it, but the bottom line is, as I found out really quickly in my rookie year, at the end of my rookie year, beginning of my second year, it's a business, and there's no loyalty among the fringe players. And even nowadays, the superstars, there's no loyalty. If somebody thinks they're going to get better with getting rid of you and getting somebody else, they're going to do it. And it's not about what you've done for the city, what you've done for the franchise. It really almost, with how many people can you say stayed on one team their whole career? Joe Dumars, Reggie Miller, Tim Duncan, Kobe. There's not a whole lot that you can say, well, they basically were untradeable. And actually, Kobe got traded for Vlade.
Oh, that's true. That's an excellent point.
So anyway, so I get to Atlanta, and I had never gotten a flu shot. They gave me the physical. They gave me a flu shot, and I got the flu.
Okay.
And I've had this discussion with lots of doctors and lots of people. They say, "Oh, the flu shot doesn't give you the flu." I got the flu. Okay. Fine. Whatever. Say I had it first. I don't care. I got the flu. So I spent a week in my hotel room in Atlanta alone, throwing up and doing other stuff that was not cute.
Sure.
And I get to finally feeling better to go back, and I go back in to work out. And Hall of Fame coach Lenny Wilkins, I'm in practice, and he goes, I'm a first-round draft pick. He doesn't know my name.
Ugh.
He goes, you, Gardiki Dikembe.
Yeah.
And so that's how my time was. I was like, I'm probably not part of this franchise if the head coach is going, you, Gardiki. So anyway, I went through the rest of training camp, which wasn't long because of the shortened season.
Yeah.
And the day of the first game, Pete Babcock called me into his office, and he says, "Hey, Scott, this is what we're going to do. We don't like that those three players have to be injured to be on the roster. We would like it to just be a reserve list," which is forward thinking. And they said, "We want you to go on the reserve list tonight without an injury and not play, or we can cut you." And I said, "Well, hold the phone, Pete. Let me go call my agent and figure out what the deal is." So I called my agent, and my agent called everybody. And within 2 hours, he had 4 teams that wanted to sign me. and he said, Sacramento seems like the best fit. They got something crazy going on here. They're really re-racking, and I think you got a chance to really break into some playing time there. It's a style that fits your style. They're going to run the Princeton offense, and it's more like what you're used to. It's not the East Coast, walk it up, call a play, look at the playbook, kind of plotting basketball. It's more what you're used to and your thing. So I said, all right, so what do I tell Pete Babcock? And he said, go in and tell him that you want to be cut, and I'll fly you to Philadelphia, because Sacramento was in Philadelphia, the next day. So that was the extent of my time in Atlanta. It was just that they really just wanted to get rid of Christian Laettner's contract, I think. And if I happened to pan out, great. But I spent most of training camp in my hotel room, throwing up and doing other gross stuff. And it just wasn't the right fit. And, what's funny is in later years, Pete Babcock and I were friends on Facebook. And he's not the GM there anymore. But we're friends on Facebook. And every time I saw him after that, he would say, Scott, I made some mistakes as a GM, but I've always kicked myself. And he told me this so many times. Like, I've always kicked myself about the way we treated you. We just didn't have the foresight to let it happen. It just wasn't the right fit. And that's how it works for a lot of fringe players. I was never a superstar. I was never going to be a superstar in the NBA. But for fringe players like myself, role players like myself, you have to be in the right spot. And Atlanta just wasn't the right spot for me. Detroit wasn't the right spot for me. Sacramento was the right spot for me. And then they traded me. And then they never went to the playoffs again.
Well, yes. Well, at least he was man enough to own up to kind of being an ass about how things were handled. You got to. I wouldn't even say he was an ass about the way things handled. He was very professional about it. At least he talked to me, right?
And that's what fair. I always told him. I said, you know what, Pete? At least you gave me an option. At least you kept me informed about the deal. I would rather know that I'm potentially on the block. I'd rather know that there's talks of me being traded, because the same thing happened in Sacramento. And I love Jeff Petrie, but the same thing happened to me in Sacramento when I got traded to Indiana. I'm playing cards with my friends during the draft in Kansas. And we're in the basement, and they say, hey, some of the Jayhawks are going to get drafted in the draft. It was shocker, Jayhawk getting drafted. I'm bragging there.
I got you.
But, yeah, we're playing cards, and all of a sudden with the 13th pick, the 2003 NBA draft, the Indiana Pacers trade their pick and Brad Miller, and there's a 3-team deal, and Scot Pollard's going to Indiana, and I'm going, what the hell? I used different language, and I made a movie about it. But that's how I got traded the second time, again, in the media before I even knew about it. So there's no loyalty. As much as you love and as much as you've done for a franchise and as much as you want to be a part of a franchise, you're ultimately a pork belly.
Right. And you're 100% right, and I apologize to Pete Babcock. I was actually confusing him with the Pistons story, the Pistons general manager.
Oh, yeah, Rick Dunn.
Yeah. So that's my fault, but you end up in Indiana. This is an interesting team, and you would find a little bit of stability in Indiana. What was that like?
Well, I got traded in the middle of a 6-year deal. So the 3 years I spent here were the last 3 years of that 6-year deal I signed with Sacramento. And really, I had fractured my sacrum, which is the bottom bone of your spine. It's in between your pelvis, in Sacramento in the fall of 2002. So I spent the first 4 months of that season out. And then I came back, and the first game back, I broke my hand playing against Greg Ostertag, a former college teammate. And so I think what happened with that is the Kings were like, wow, we've never seen this injury, because they told me, the doctors told me they'd never seen that injury in the NBA.
That's troubling.
And it's so I think from their perspective, they're thinking, wow, we don't know if he's going to heal. We got 4 different recommendations from 4 different doctors. The LA doctors said it was a tumor, which was crazy. He was actually, at the time, the Lakers doctor. He said it was a tumor. And the Sacramento doctors said it's a stress fracture, and we're hoping it heals, but it's going to heal different because bone grows back bigger, so it might throw off the way your spine works. I sent it to Kansas, and a doctor there said that it would require career-ending surgery. They're going to have to remove my pelvis and put a screw in there because it was never going to heal. So, I think that Sacramento was thinking, man, we don't know if he's going to be good. And I came back that year in 2003, in the spring of 2003, and I played my butt off, and I had a great game, unfortunately. against Indiana. Had 15 or 16 points and 15 or 16 rebounds. And killed him here in Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
And lo and behold, I get traded here that summer. So never play well in a city that you don't want to play in.
Well, good advice to everyone. You spent some time with one Reggie Miller on that team. What was Reggie like to be around?
Reggie was one of the greatest leaders that I ever was around, but you're not going to get a lot of vocal leading from Reggie. Reggie's a lead by example kind of guy.
Okay.
The vocal stuff was there if you asked him, but he wasn't a barker. He wasn't a bully. He wasn't one of those guys that would resonate with the mentality of a lot of alpha males, which all NBA players are, for the most part. So when I wanted Reggie to scream at guys and yell and say, get your ass doing this or get your butt doing that, and, that just wasn't his character. And I wish that he had been more of that, because I really think that we would have won an NBA championship had we had that type of leader. Now, on that team, we had Jermaine O'Neal, who was the kind of guy that would bark at people and try to give orders. But Jermaine was not the first guy there. In fact, he was always the last guy there and always the first guy to leave. And so I love Jermaine. Nothing personal here. That's just how he was as a teammate. And so it's hard for a leader of a team, of a franchise, to be the guy that's not the hardest working guy on the team. And people don't respond to that. Type A personalities, alpha males, we're always chewing each other's legs off. And it's easier to chew legs off a guy that's not chewing as hard as you are, right?
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
I give speeches on leadership. I'm giving one tomorrow night to the local union here in Indiana, and these are the stories I talk about in some of these speeches about leadership and teamwork, and it's a special situation when you get to be around a player like Reggie Miller, who, if the team has the maturity to watch and incorporate his movement, his work ethic, his example into their own repertoire, then Reggie is one of the greatest leaders I ever played with. But if your team, like the team that we had here when I was here, is not as mature and not paying attention to other people and not watching their teammates, well, then, Reggie wasn't as effective as a leader as he would have been with a team that was more mature, like the team that went to the NBA Finals in 2000. When you got the Dunking Dutchman and you got the Dale Davis brothers and you've got a mature squad, I'm sure Reggie was a much better leader for that team because they're watching him and they're trying to emulate him. We had a younger mentality team, a rebuilding situation, and Reggie was nearing the end. He was definitely in the twilight of his career. His last 2 years were my first 2 years of my 3 years here. And, it ultimately turned out to be his swan song, that he was just like, he saw, I think, that there wasn't a whole lot he could do with this team because it was outside of his personality to be a bully, to be a vocal guy. He was just a guy that came in and worked his butt off, would absolutely tell you if you asked him what you should do, because I did all the time, because I was like, that's Reggie Miller. I got to learn something from him. When I'm a teammate of these superstars, another thing I talk about with my leadership and teamwork speeches, when I'm talking to other people about learning from the people you're around in your workplace, I'm around some of the greatest superstars in our time, in my time in the NBA. And I pulled Grant Hill aside. I pulled Rick Horn aside. I pulled Joe Dumars aside. I pulled Reggie Miller aside. I pulled Chris Webber and Vlade Divac and LeBron James and Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce. I pull these guys aside, Ray Allen, and the list goes on. But that's the kind of player I was. I wanted to learn from players that I knew were more talented than me. And so when you have that maturity level, then you want to be a better teammate. And I don't think that Indiana Pacers team had that level of maturity to watch a leader by example and get better because he's just doing everything right.
Right.
And we're going to try to be like him. They needed more of a guy that was going to yell at them and tell them what exactly they were doing wrong, and then, try to learn from that.
So you go from Reggie Miller in year 15 of his career to LeBron James in year 3 of his career. What was a young LeBron James like to be around?
He's a kid. He was 22, I think, at the time, and that was a different thing. And I talk about this as well, where you see the as we talked about with Paul Pierce earlier, the Bambi type thing.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, you see that this kid is he's already great at that point, but you're seeing that he's going to be one of the greats of all time, and you want him to be the leader of the team because he is the best.
Yeah.
He is by far the best player on this team. And talk about a ragtag group of veterans. They had to fill in the roster because they overpaid Larry Hughes. They overpaid LeBron. Not overpaid, but you're giving these big deals out to guys, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, we need some veterans to lead these young guys. And well, they're paying us all minimum wage and smaller dollar amounts. And Zydrunas was getting he got a big deal as well. But Zydrunas was just not a vocal guy at all. He's a guy who's like, hey, just tell me where to be. I'll be there. And he's steady as a rock, and he was a great teammate. I love Zydrunas, but, not a leader type guy. So we all wanted LeBron, the older guys were sitting there going, we're over 30, and we're sitting at the end of the bench, and we have all this knowledge, and we want you to spit out what we're spitting to you. But LeBron was just not ready for it at that point. Yeah. And I think he even admitted that. I saw him saying when he went to Miami, that was like him going to college finally. Where he used that as a learning experience, and he became a better leader and a better teammate from having gone and done that, and then he's back in Cleveland and he wins a championship. So, it's right that your 22-year-old can't be the leader of the team when you got these 30-year-olds, because he was looking at the same thing from us, like, hey, you guys are the ones with the experience, and I know that's what was on his mind. But at the same time, we're going, it's hard to lead from the end of the bench, but there are things we can do. We're going to give you advice. We're going to tell you certain things, but I can't, as a guy that's playing, 10 minutes one game and 0 for 3 games, and then all of a sudden I'm playing 20 minutes because somebody's injured, or 30 minutes because somebody's injured.
Probably Zydrunas.
Here and there. Yeah, and I'm sitting there going, okay, then all of a sudden I'm like in the huddle going, hey, LeBron, do this, and Larry, do that, and Drew Gooden, come on, man, and let's get this together. It's hard when you're not a main fixture of the rotation to be that vocal guy. Guys tune you out. Again, alpha male. You're going to hear it from the guy that's hardly in the lineup or sporadically in the lineup, or are you going to hear it from the guy that's playing 48 minutes a game? That's how it is. So it was something that we knew LeBron wanted us to give as much as we could, but at the same time, after a while, you don't want to hear David Wesley and Scot Pollard and Donyell Marshall down there, humming the tune of, hey, guys, we really need to do this. It's like, screw you, man. You play 3 minutes a game. You DNP, CD. Shut up,
That's funny. And then after Cleveland, we have your last stop on your NBA journey, which is the Boston Celtics, and you finally get your ring. This has to be the perfect culmination to this career.
Well, yeah, not perfect, but it was a great way to walk out, limp out of the NBA. Mm-hmm. I had both of my ankles rebuilt. One was in February and one was in May. As soon as I was out of the walking boot of my left ankle, which gave out on me, they did an MRI of my right ankle, and they were like, yeah, it's exactly the same. So they rebuilt both my ankles. And so I ended up watching the rest of the playoffs, from the bench. And it's funny, when I went on Survivor, of course, the younger kids, they don't understand that. And I caught a lot of flack on social media because some of the people, well, not some, there was one person on Survivor that didn't like me. Okay. And she's like, you didn't even play in the playoffs. So, of course, all the young kids are, like, looking it up on Wikipedia. It's like, yeah, he didn't play in the playoffs at all. It's like, well, if you were an actual basketball fan, you'd understand that I had career-ending surgery, and that's why I didn't play in the playoffs. I was in the finals the year before with the Cleveland Cavaliers, and I in that finals, but this one I couldn't physically play in. Anyway, so that's the part that wasn't perfect, was being injured. But I got injured basically right before training camp started, and I played hurt. That ankle just would not heal, and as it turns out, there was a reason. It was years of abuse, and it was really jacked up, and it needed to be rebuilt. But when we finally came to that decision, the doctor in Boston was like, you're getting surgery. This was in training camp. I got sent home from Rome when the team was in Rome and headed to London to play some preseason games. And I got sent home from that. And the doctor was like, look, you're getting surgery. We do it now. You'll be out for 4 months, and then you'll be good to go for the rest of the season, hopefully. But there's no guarantees, and it depends on your healing. And he goes, but, you can try to make it through the year, but you're getting surgery. And I just said, well, I'm not going to just voluntarily get surgery. I'm going to do what I do and bang my head against the wall. I'm Fred Flint's caveman. So I'm just going to go until I can't go anymore. And that's what I did. And so, you know, in February I was starting because Kendrick Perkins was out with an injury. And I started against the Phoenix Suns in Phoenix because Shaquille was on the team at that point. Mm-hmm. And that's when it literally gave out. In a game, it popped, and I thought I popped my Achilles tendon, and I was like, I can't really push off. And then I felt my Achilles, and I was like, okay, my Achilles is there, but something is giving out. And I lied to the trainer. I was like, I just tweaked it. I sat out the rest of that game. And then the next night, because I knew I was starting the next night in Portland against Joel Prisbilla, the leader of the Portland Trailblazers.
Absolutely.
At that point. And so I started that game. I faked it through warm-ups. I jumped off the wrong foot in warm-ups, and nobody knew for sure. The trainer knew I was limping a little bit, but I faked it even though I couldn't really push off that leg. And then there was a play that happened where I was boxing Joel out, actually, and the ball went over my head. He got it. I couldn't jump to get the ball, which I should have because I had him perfect position. I could have gotten that ball had I been normal ability. And that's when he got the ball and went up, and I fouled him to stop him. And Doc Rivers pulled me over and called timeout. He goes, man, you're out. And I go, what? What do you mean? I just messed up. I fouled him, though, And he goes, no, man, you can't even jump right now. It's like, Doc, I never could jump. And he goes, no, I don't know what's going on, but you're done. You're not playing anymore. And that's when they sent me home from that trip, and that's when I ended up getting surgery. But, being part of that Boston Celtics team, as I alluded to earlier, Kevin Garnett, great leader, great teammate. Didn't like him as a person. Didn't like him playing against him because it's the same thing, and I didn't say that about Reggie. And a lot of the great players that I hated playing against until I was teammates with them. And then you realize why. Because they're competitors. Because they want to win. Because they're awful competitors to play against. And then when you're with those guys, those dogs that just want to fight, that just want to win no matter what, it absolutely engulfs your soul. If you're a winner, if you want to win and you're a competitor, you want to be with guys like that. You want to compete with teammates that want to give everything they can to win. And that was the greatest experience about being on that Boston Celtics team. As you said, Chris, it was not a perfect end in my words, but it was a perfect end to a career where I had been on teams my entire life, junior, senior year of high school, all 4 years of college, except for my rookie year in Detroit. I was in the playoffs every year of my basketball career and never got to knock that door down. That's a Roy Williams expression. And then finally to be on a team that knocked the door down, albeit without me, to be a part of that. I wear that championship ring for all those teams that I was on that I was more of a part of that would have and didn't. And so it was a phenomenal year. That's my favorite city to live in of the NBA cities, not counting Lawrence, Kansas and that. But Boston is a great city. It's a great sports city. It's a wonderful town full of wonderful people. There are some rumors around there about certain things, but man, I didn't see it. I love being there. I love being amongst the people walking around South Boston. Obviously it helps being a Celtic, so of course I'm padded from that. Maybe some of the things that are rumors about that place, but it's a wonderful city, and I really think that they're the type of people that would absolutely do anything for anybody because it's just ingrained in them. And what a wonderful cap to my career to be able to get that NBA championship ring because Paul Pierce is an amazing human being, an amazing player, and NBA Finals MVP. And every time somebody says, hey, man, that's a nice championship ring, because I don't wear it that much anymore. But when I do, people go, man, NBA champion. I go, yeah, Paul Pierce got this for me. Because he did. There were other factors, obviously, at the team. But Paul Pierce was the guy that brought it home for Boston, brought it home for himself, and brought it home for his teammates.
Well, we've already gone kind of long. There are two more things I want to talk about. Do you have 10 minutes? I don't want to take up too much of your time.
Sure. All right, I'm a talker. You know that, Chris.
I appreciate that because this is where I get really interested. Not that the NBA career wasn't great. I'm a giant NBA fan. Your stories have been fantastic. But after this, you do some broadcasting, and then you show up in a movie called Axeman, where you play the titular Axeman. How did that happen?
Well, actually, I had at the time joined this website, I guess. I don't know. It's called Actors Access, I think. I haven't been on it in a while.
Okay.
But, you know, I had an LA agent, and he told me the truth. He said, look, you don't live in LA, and the kind of spots you're going to get in movies are going to be day shoots, maybe 2 or 3 days, because you're too big to be a mainstream actor.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, I have guys that are former NBA players that take acting classes, and they still don't get gigs because they're too tall. There's a reason why actors are all short.
Sure.
And so they fit in the same screen with the female actors. Makes total sense, right? It does. So I'm living in Kansas at the time, and I just, you know, so I joined this thing because I was like, yeah, you know what, once in a while. Well, I'd gotten one. It was a slasher movie, and it was called, anyway, it was a slasher movie. It was a 3-part mini story, and I played a mean character called El Monstro, and I killed people in that movie as well. And then, you know, there's some others like expressed interest, but then it didn't happen because they're like, oh, you live in Kansas, and now, as my agent told me, he's like, look, they're not going to fly you out for a 1-day or 2-day shoot when they've got a 6'6" guy that it doesn't demand NBA player money, and I'm not even saying I demanded NBA player money. I'm like, I'll work for whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, they had to fly me out for an audition, or I'd have to fly myself out for an audition where, you know, all of the other actors that are giant dudes that are sitting in L.A. can drive across town, do an audition, get paid $500 or $1,000 for a 2-day shoot, and they're done. They don't have to fly them out. They don't have to put them in a hotel, you know. So there's a reason why people live in L.A. and New York, and it's because that's where most of the movies are being made. So anyway, they contacted me. Justin Feeney is the director and writer of the Axeman series, and it is a series. The Axeman 2 actually just is being released right now on Amazon, and I'm pumping it up even though I'm not in Axeman 2. Things didn't work out for my schedule to be a part of Axeman 2, but there is going to be an Axeman 3, and I'm not saying I'm going to be in that one either, but I'm going to contact Jocelyn and tell him I'm available because I would love because I know what Axeman 3 is going to be about. And there's a possibility to bring my character back.
All right.
So anyway, that's how it happened. Is that website, and they contacted me and said, hey, yeah, you know, if you don't mind working for peanuts, and basically living like a college kid for 2 weeks, because what we did is he rented this big house in Big Bear, in a cabin out in Big Bear, California, and all of us, all 15 or 16 of us, stayed in this house for 10, 12, 14 days, something like that, and filmed. And Justin hardly slept. And the dude he's a maniac. It was in the movie. He wrote it and he filmed it and directed it. And there was all of us stayed in this cabin together. So there was times where you had to like move rooms because they were using the room you sit in for the scene. And so you're like it's 3 a.m. and they're shooting basically around the clock. And you're like, oh, I got to get out of this room so they can shoot the love scene in my bed. Awesome. But it was a fun experience, and it's even though I've never been in a major motion picture, I was part of one, and nobody knows this. Can I go on about this, Chris? I'm going on about it anyway.
Absolutely.
So you've heard of the movie Semi-Pro, right?
Yeah, of course.
Will Ferrell?
Yeah.
Well, I was in that movie. We filmed it in 1998 after my rookie year in the NBA. I got called, and my agent said, hey, man, they want to put you in this movie. They'll fly you to Toronto every weekend for 4 or 5 weeks. They're going to pay you a bunch of money, and you're going to be in this movie called New Jersey Turnpikes. The script of Semi-Pro. This team was just doing anything they could to get fans in the stands so they could try to make it to the NBA, because New Jersey was one of the other ABA teams that was trying to get into the NBA. And we filmed it from start to finish. And I don't know if you've ever heard of a guy named Jason Segel.
Yeah, of course.
But the superstar CBS guy,
yeah,
he was an unknown guy at the time. He's 18 years old. I was 22 or something like that. And we played the Mormon characters, basically in Semi-Pro, Fakaitis, the Russian guy. But in New Jersey Turnpikes, we were like Mormon guys that just kind of kept to ourselves. So there was 2 of us instead of 1 in Semi-Pro. But we filmed the whole movie from start to finish. There was Kelsey Grammer, Mike Starr, David Bell from Different World, Orlando
Jones?
Yeah, Orlando Jones is the main character. of the guy that was all the talent. It was like, oh man, I'm too good for this, whatever. I mean, we filmed the whole thing in Toronto. They dyed my hair blonde, dyed my eyebrows blonde. I'd never dyed my eyebrows blonde before. Anyway, and it just goes to show you how much money is in LA, because that was a $5 million budget film at least, and it never got released. And then years later, somebody bought it and recast it and made it funny. And there you have Semi-Pro. But it was just funny watching that movie, Semi-Pro, because I'm sitting there going, I was in this. We made this movie. So,
this is amazing. Yeah. There's got to be a copy of that out there somewhere.
I've never seen it. I wish there was. And I'd run into David Bell more than anybody else in L.A. because he was a Clippers fan. And so I'd see him sideline once in a while. I'm like, David, have you seen it? He goes, yeah, man, I saw it. I'm like, is it funny? He goes, yeah, it's got some good parts. I'm like, what happened to it? He goes, oh, they deep sixed it, man. It's gone. I'm like, can I get a copy? He's like, no.
That's
that
was
my
rough.
only connection, because I had no idea about Hollywood at that point, and I don't know much about it now because I'm still living in Indiana.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that was one I really wish I could watch and see it. But yeah, the New Jersey Turnpikes, we filmed the whole thing. And,
that's tough to be in a movie and you can't even get a copy of it.
Yeah, well, that's how secretive people are about their films, and now I've been on the other side of it as a producer of my own film, and I didn't direct it, but I helped the writer write it, and the director, who is also the writer. I've been very close to the vest with mine, because I don't want it getting out there for free. If it's going to make some money, I'd like it to make some money, but I'm certainly not going to just like throw it out there if it's got a chance to get to Amazon Prime or something like that.
Al, I'm sorry, what are we talking about with your film?
I made a movie called The Profit, Profit, and it's loosely based on my career, not a life story, but it's about a guy that he's towards the end of his career, and his college coach calls him back to the city that he went to college in, and mentor this young kid who's making them. He probably is going to make the same mistakes that it turns out the Prophet, the main character, has made every mistake that a pro athlete can make. He's, got a lot of women pregnant, and he's got child support payments, and he's blown all his money. He's trying to make it one more year because he's trying to get his full benefits and retirement and all that kind of stuff. And he's got a bad wheel, and so it's based on a lot of experiences I was around and knew, and teammates I had, and they're all kind of wrapped up into a few characters in the film. But we filmed it in Lawrence, Kansas, ultra low budget. I was the producer, so we spent nothing on the film. And I showed it in Kansas. I've showed it in Indiana. I showed it in Sacramento this summer. And it's just hard to get people to theaters for an independent film. We haven't had good showings. Everybody that does show up and comes and sees it, they say, man, you need to show this to high school kids and college kids, because it turns out it's more, as I'm assuming filmmakers feel this way all the time, that they come in with a vision, and sometimes the film takes on a personality of its own, and it's totally different than what they had envisioned. And that's certainly the case in my case, is where I envisioned it to be a comedy. I wanted it to be a hilarious film, a spoof almost, but it turned out to be a drama, and it's like more of an after-school special of what not to do. And so it's called The Profit. I've got copies of it. I don't share them with people. And it's something that I would like to sell it and maybe get somebody that goes, hey, you know what? I see what you're trying to do here. I like your story. Can we make a TV show out of it? Because that's really what I want to do. Because I've got a whole lot more stories that I would like to tell in the format of a television show, because I can't write a book. And the reason I can't write a book, Chris, is because I've got too many teammates that I love, care about, and they have families. Yeah. And I've got kids and a family, and telling some of these stories, if you look at Entourage like it's Mark Wahlberg's life, which it kind of is loosely based on, there you go. Do you really want your kids to think that that's exactly what you did? You know, if you wrote that in a book. But if you watch it on a TV show, Entourage, well, you know what? Maybe that did happen to my dad, or maybe that did happen to my teammate or whatever, and their family's watching it going, did that really happen? It's like, oh, no, that's TV. But if I wrote a book, it's a little different. Yeah. So that's my goal, is to do that. And it's funny, Chris. I got Hollywooded years ago, and feel free to cut me off anytime, but
No,
I'm
you're
going to keep going. Years ago, when I was pitching my TV show idea in Hollywood, I sat down with some executives from various major networks on cable, and I pitched this idea to them, basically the basketball version of Entourage, and they were like, we'll pass.
Mm-hmm.
And what was it, a year and a half, 2 years later maybe, Ballers came out.
Yeah.
So they took my idea, and they just put a good actor, The Rock, as the main character. But that's basically where that idea came from, is the sports version of Entourage. And Ballers is a very successful program, and I'm happy for them. I'm not bitter about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I did get Hollywooded about that. I probably should have been a little bit closer to the vest about that idea. But, there's opportunities that happen. There's opportunities that show themselves, and you just keep on working and keep on grinding, and then maybe some of them come to fruition.
Yeah, and it's a very good time for that, too, because there's so many avenues with Amazon and with Apple and with iTunes is going into programming and Netflix, and there are so many cable channels. It's such a good time to want to get into that game.
It is, and also, as I mentioned earlier, it's really hard. I mean, even you go to a blockbuster movie release, there's not a whole lot of people in the theater anymore. It's not like people are camping out watching, the next movie that's coming, because there's so many movies all the time.
Yeah.
And the ability to download them, wait a month, and download it for free, or a much less expensive evening than taking your wife and your kids to a movie at the tune of $150 once you get snacks and tickets.
Mm-hmm.
You can wait a month, and so it's hard to get people to movie theaters. The wave of the future, Netflix ushered it in, and now everybody's just kind of stealing that idea of streaming programming, and that's the way it is. And so, yeah, I'm hoping to maybe get into that. But I promised some people I was going to start doing some YouTube videos this fall on Planet Pollard, my YouTube channel, and I'm going to try to get into that more and tell some funny stories on YouTube, because I've done these live chats on the social medias, and they don't generate a whole lot of buzz, but maybe YouTube will because of YouTube.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's all about building an audience with stuff like that too. You just have to do it, and you keep getting more people. And it's a grind, but I think that's definitely a good avenue for you, because you are a gifted storyteller and you're very affable. I think that would work out really well for you. So the last thing I want to hit on, 8 years after you win a championship with the Boston Celtics, you come back into the American public's good graces, right into our televisions with Survivor Season 32. I'm a longtime Survivor fan. I was thrilled. I'm not going to lie here. I was thrilled to hear Scot Pollard would be on Survivor, because I thought that was going to be fascinating. And how did all of this come to be? Well,
it's all wrapped together in the same story. I was out in L.A. pitching my TV show, and I heard no a lot. And I was out at a restaurant with my, at the time, business partner and some other people, drowning my sorrows. And I got approached by a casting director in 2010. And she was like, do you want to, you know, the TV show Survivor? And I was like, oh, no. My first marriage was falling apart. And I was like, if I leave for 7 weeks, bad things are going to happen. So it wasn't the right time for me to leave the country for 7 weeks and be on Survivor with no contact with my family. But then in the fall of 2014, they contacted me again and asked me, and I had some friends that are friends with people that know people that know people that were also pushing me behind my back. I didn't know. But then they contacted me and said, would you consider it? And I ran out for casting, and I was on a plane not too long later to go out to the show. So that's how it happened. And it was a great experience. It was about what I thought, not exactly what I thought it was going to be. I honestly thought that there were going to be more hospitality type stuff for the survivors out on the island. I thought that maybe they gave you stuff behind the scenes to make your experience a little more comfortable. No, they don't. The surviving part is absolutely real. You're sleeping on bamboo. There's no gimmies in that other than stuff you win or take. And but the greatest about it is my wife and I, the separation of 7 weeks made a decision for us that we hadn't come to before that, is that we were going to have a baby. And so we have a baby, and he's our little Survivor baby. His name's Ison. and that's number 4 for me, and I'm done. Finally, I'm not trying to create another race of people. But no, it was a great experience, and it's another thing that I take into my speeches when I'm giving public speeches to people, motivational, and talking about, you get slapped into an experience that you don't know what to expect, and with people you don't know, and you can turn it into what you want it to turn it into. You can turn it into a bitter experience where you blame everybody else. You got voted out, and I hate that guy or I hate that girl because they didn't work with me or whatever. Or you can say, hey, I learned this or I learned that from it, and turn it into a positive experience. And so as many issues I had on social media with death threats and people calling my family names, and even one of the people on Survivor said some bad things about me and my kids on social media. All that fades away with the times. And for social media, it's 140 characters, or it's a snap and it's gone. There's always the next thing. So I'm old enough to have that long-term view about social media. It's always temporary, even though it's permanent. But the mindset is temporary, and those things pass. But the positive experiences last. I've got friends from this show that I never would have ever met had I not been on Survivor, and obviously, as I mentioned, I've got a son that I would never have had I not gone on that show. So it absolutely was a positive experience for me. I wish that they would have shown a little bit more of my actual personality as opposed to, characterizing me as a villain on the show. Which, hey, I killed people in movies. We talked about it earlier. I was the X-Man. I was El Monstro. So I've been the villain in movies. I've been the villain on a reality TV show, and I'm okay with that. If there was one thing I could choose to change, is to go back and be treated as more of my actual character, which is I'm always giving to people, and I'm a provider for people, and I'm a guy that tells stories and tells jokes a lot. But it's a TV show, and you sign over your life and your ability to control it. They cast you as however they want, and I understood that going into it. And the sad part was watching some of the people on the show that didn't realize they signed that away. And they were really distraught and had to go to counseling because of how they were portrayed on the TV show. So, at least I had that experience of being a public figure and knowing that it's out of control. And overall, I give it an 80% positive experience.
How much of that is editing, that they're just creating personalities?
Well, they film you 24 hours a day. Well, 20 hours a day, let's say, because there's 4 hours where, if it's a challenge day or it's tribal council, there's production stuff that happens that they turn the cameras off and then you're not allowed to talk. So
wait, what? Wait, what?
There's when the cameras aren't running, you're not allowed to speak because they don't want to miss anything, and that makes sense. They want to catch everything on camera.
They make you just basically sit in silence? That's crazy.
Yes. Yeah. So when you're getting ready for a challenge, for example, everybody has to go to medical, and during that time there's no cameras, and so you go one at a time to medical to check up on you, and then after every challenge it's the same thing, and during that whole time there's no cameras on you, and so nobody's allowed to talk to each other. You're not allowed to motion to each other or communicate in any way, and if you do too much, the producers are watching. They'll make you go back to back with whoever you're trying to communicate with. So that's just part of it to keep the on-camera stuff authentic, and that makes sense. But that's the only time. And actually, to me, that was the most difficult time because I'm a talker, if you haven't noticed. And so I didn't like being quiet and being told to be quiet because I don't like being told anything. But it was that was a difficult part of being on the show. But so you're on camera so much of the day, 20 out of 24 hours on average, that they have enough footage to narrate anybody any way they want, don't they? Because everybody has moods.
Right.
Everybody has highs and lows and laughable points and dumb things. And so, they can make somebody, they go, you know what, we're going to make this one the comic relief or the dumbski, or we're going to make this one the snob. And we're going to make, we're just going to take all the highlights of them being snobby or arrogant or idiot, and they can certainly tailor the plot to fit whatever their narrative is that they're going for. And again, knew that going in, And as soon as I saw Jason, the tattooed guy with the red beard and the ponytail, I mean, as soon as we were allowed to talk to each other, we were like, well, guess who the villains are? We are, buddy. So we played it up, of course, because we knew what was going on. We knew we were going to get cast as villains. So it wasn't hard for us to just play it up as villains, because then it was almost like, all right, well, we're in no danger of getting the hero edit. So, you know, when we stole stuff and, you know, acted like jerks and we were so mean to people, you know, we're sitting there laughing about it because we're like, yeah, this is going to be a fun edit for them. You know, it's pretty easy. We're making it easy on the editors. So they absolutely have enough footage to steer people or characters in the way that they want that character to look. And, you know, I feel fortunate that I got to be on the show. I feel fortunate that they, you know, didn't bury me. They didn't make me look like a complete jerk and moron. But at the same time, as I said, I would love to have another shot at the show, which I think is highly doubtful. But, you know, to get another edit and maybe see if a different part of my personality, it's a more realistic side. I have some friends, some very close friends, that they refuse to watch the show now because they were like, that wasn't you. I was like, hey, you guys, you've been watching the show since minute one. You think all those people on that show are not being edited to as we talked about, you know, in the direction they want them to be? And they were just like, I don't care. They did you wrong. They shouldn't have shown you in that light. And, you know, and I was like, hey, I was a willing participant. It's okay. Right. You know, it's a character on a TV show. But, you know, it feels good to hear people say that. But at the same time, it is just a TV show. And so, you know, people that come up to me, they're like, wow, you're a lot nicer in person. I'm like, it's a TV show. You get that right? Right. Like, well, I've murdered people on a movie, and they're not really dead.
Yeah. Well, that as far as you know. But we've talked about editing quite a bit. Debbie's got to be a little bit quirky, though, right?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, it works within the framework of the personality, and certainly the second time around when she went back, of course she was like, okay, I get it, and she went completely Debbie. And that's what they're looking for. They're looking for people that aren't afraid to express emotion. They need big personalities on the show so that they can have that option of playing up the highlights of the craziest things you say. And Debbie and I didn't get along really well towards the end of our interaction, and definitely after we were back up on the road, so we didn't talk a whole lot. But it was funny, you know, at the reunion, when we were there for the finale, you know, she was one of the people that was like, as she watched the finale of the show on the island, and we're in the jury, and she just leaned over to me as we were watching this at the finale, the live finale. She leaned over and she was just like, Scott, how did they catch you and edit you as never smiling as a jury member? All you did was crack jokes and had us laughing the entire time. And I was like, I don't know. It's pretty cool. Because, I mean, even Debbie, one of the people that I didn't really get along with well on the island, said the same thing. So if somebody that was there can even mention something about how they edited my character to make me look a little bit different than you know, and again, I did all those things. I said all those things. I made all those expressions. But editing has a lot to do with how any television show or movie plays out. My own movie, The Prophet, I wanted it to be a comedy. And as we filmed it and got longer, and as we go through the process and we're editing it down, it's like, it doesn't work as a comedy. It works as a drama. So we edited it as a drama, even though I started out as a comedy. And I was making jokes and you know, telling funny stories. I'd edited it out.
Wow. Well, this has been a real treat, Scott. I know I went a lot longer than I expected to. I appreciate you giving up your time. Is there anything you want to plug here at the end of the show? What's Scot Pollard got going on right now?
Oh, I'm just on the social media. Do Scot Pollard 31 on Twitter. It's 1T, ladies and gentlemen. Scott with 1T Pollard 31 at Twitter, and then on Instagram I'm Scott P31. Facebook's just for friends and family, so I don't give that one out. That's I don't accept people I don't know on Facebook. But you know, as I said, Planet Pollard on YouTube. I'm hoping to get some new videos up and do some funny stuff this fall with that. But there's always something popping up. As I said a little bit, I do some public speaking for corporations and Rotary groups and schools, and I do camps for the Pacers. I do a lot of appearances for the Pacers community service type stuff, and so I'm just doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Nothing you would call a career right now.
Well, you had a pretty solid career before this. I think you're all right.
Yeah, well, I'm not coasting into the sunset. There will be something coming up soon, I'm sure.
Well, everybody should check out Planet Pollard and potentially Axeman 3, I guess released in a couple of years. Who knows whether or not Scott will be involved in that. This has been a special edition of the Underdog Podcast. Scot Pollard, thank you so much for giving your time. This has been great.
Thanks a lot, Chris. And all the overage, the extension, of course, is because of my long-winded.
Well, we appreciate you.